Today we are going to start nested loops. So let's start. When a loop is written inside the body of another loop, then it is called as nesting of loops, or we can say nested loops. We have already learned loops in our previous lecture. So any type of loop can be nested inside any other type of loop. For example, a for loop may be nested inside the do while loop or any other for loop, right? A while loop or a do while loop can be nested in another do while or while loop. Similarly, we can say while and do while loops can be nested. Okay, so what means we have to declare a outer loop, we have to declare an inner loop. So how we declare? So we first write the outer loop, then opening brace, then the part of statement you want to execute through the outer loop, then the inner loop, then the part of statements which you want to execute through inner loop. Isn't it? You have to execute set of statement with the outer loop and set of statement with the inner loop. The proper opening and closing must be there. How it works? It works, first outer loop will take the argument, it check the condition. If the condition is true, it will automatically jump to inner loop, and inner loop will execute till the condition is true. Again it will go to outer loop. Isn't it? We will do it in practicals also, but for this time you have to clear that this syntax will be for your nested loops. You have to make an outer loop, you have to make inner loop. There can be many inner loops, isn't it? And one outer loop is there. They can be nested at any level. Okay? Now, for example, we take the case of for loop. What will be the syntax for loop if we declare inside the C language? So, we require, as we have already learned for loop in our previous lecture, you can go through them. Then we have learned for loop takes 3 arguments at the same line, that is initialization, then it takes condition and then the increment. Similar for the inner for loop will be initialization, condition and increment. There are some set of statements inside the first loop and some set of inside the outer loop, isn't it? So first of all, what it does, it goes to the outer loop, then the inner loop. Like inner loop does the operation till the condition is true. You have to note down one thing, every time when outer loop is for example, outer loop has initialized a value 1 and inner loop is also initialized the value with 1. When the condition of the inner loop will be terminated, then it goes to the outer loop. Okay? Now, one thing you have to always remember that when the condition is false for outer loop, it will terminate and display the output. Isn't it? That means it's very important for, programmer to take the condition properly for the outer loop. If we make mistake in outer loop while declaring the condition, the desired output will not be there. For example, these are the two cases for which we require nesting of loops. Whenever we want to print the data in rows and columns, isn't it? Again repeating, whenever we require the data must be in rows and columns, we use the concept of nesting of loops. See what happens there. First is 1 star, then 2 star, then 3 star, then 4 star, and in similar manner there is 1, then 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. While printing the asterisk sign or a star sign, you are seeing that first time At the first row, it is printing 1. At the second row, it's printing 2 stars. At the third number row, it's printing 3 stars. Isn't it? So the program should be, the first for loop is for rows, number of rows. So how many number of rows are there? For the each case, there are 4 rows. So outer loop will be, the condition will be there for 4, or an inner is depend on the rows, right? So one thing you have to clear in your mind, that what it means. 2 loops are used whenever there are rows and columns. So outer loop will execute till the condition is true, and inner loop will reset every time after getting the false condition. That means what? When for loop is at the inner part, it will execute depends on the condition, right? So for our these both examples, we will do the examples in practical also. So you have to remember what we require. We require 2 loops. When we do looping in our previous lecture, we use a variable I there for incrementing the value or for decrementing the value. So there are 2 loops now we are using for nested loop. So we have to use 2 variables, that is I and j. So we can see that for 2 nested loops or many nested loops, you can say when I is 1, if I start with 1 value, j will execute the inner loop 1 time for our case, which we are saying for our example. When I is 2, j should execute the inner loop 2 times, that is j's value must be 1 and 2. Again it will reset. When I is 3, j will be execute inner loop 3 times. That means j will be 1, j will be 2 and j will be 3. That means whatever you print inside the inner loop, it will print 3 times, right? Similar concept till the outer loop becomes false. If you have, condition more than 3, then inner loop will execute 4 times and 5 times in the similar manner. That means what? For our example, inner loop condition depends on outer loop, isn't it? So let's take the example in practicals, and we will see how practical will work and how the output will work in our practical labs. So one thing you have to clear, that for nested loops you have to use what? You have to use 2 loops. So let me start. As we have started with defining the comments, and then we have to start with main, then we initialize a variable I and j because we have to use 2 loops, right? For our example, we require 2 loops, that is nesting of loops. So outside loop is what? For taking the variable I. So it is initializing I is 1, and in our condition we want to print till 5 rows. So I am giving the 5, then increment, because every time for the row I have to increment. For the inner, I will use j's again from the 1 first position. Then I give the condition j less than equals to 1, and then increment j is equals to j plus 1. Okay. Then we will put opening brace. Okay. Now what we have to do? We have to print asterisk sign. So what we put? We put star sign here, right? We have to put some space. Okay. Then we will close it and we will put semicolon, isn't it? So close the brace. Now we will close this brace again, and we will put get ch here, and we will say close. If we run this program, see, first of all we will save it. We will save it with the name, because it is a C++ extension. We have to convert it into C, because otherwise it will prompt you an error. So we have saved it by overwriting the file. So the name is NL. Now see what will be the output. Whether the output is that which I want. The output was what? For 1 star, then the 2 stars, then the 3 star, like pyramid. So see, output is like this. It was not my output. My output was with 1, then 2. So we require some changes in our program. What we do, we do space sign here. We didn't mention any slash n. If we mention slash n inside the inner loop, it will print in a new line format, that is vertically all the stars. But we don't require that type. We require the first time it should be 1 star, next time it should be 2 star. So we require this slash n in the position outside the inner loop and inside the outer loop. Why? Because every time inner loop will reset. See, every time inner loop will reset, for will take, for example, 2 inner loops. Condition is depend on the what? I. That means if I is 2, then J will be executed till 1 and 2. If I is 3, J will execute till 1, 2 and 3. That means 3 times printf. Whatever we have already discussed in few previous lectures, that loop will execute till the condition, and loop is repeating the same thing which is present inside the loop. So star will be executing that much time that J is executing with the particular condition. Isn't it clear? Now it will execute till the condition is wrong for outer loop. We run it and see, this is our output which we were required. That means what? 1 star, 2 star, and number of the rows are 5. That means J depends on which? J depends on I. That's the reason we have put J less than equals to I. Okay? So clear? This is the concept of nested loop. For example, we take another example which was there in previous, So the example is 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. There is little change which we have to make now. We will delete the star sign, and we know if we print the J is first time 1. Next time it is again resetting. I have already told you in the lecture that J is always resetting the value from 1. Again 1 to I condition is there. So we will run it again. But the space is not there. So we will put a space after %d and we will run it again, and we will see what happens. It will prompt you the same output which we want. See, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, isn't it? So this is my output. Half parameter is this. So in the similar manner, you can make many more, patterns. You can say reverse string, reverse numbers, or for the I, if you want to print I. If I print %d I, so I will print 1, then 2, 2, 3, 3, because every time, I is printing 1 time and inner for loop will reset. So when we do the same program with while loop, what will happen? You have to make changes like this. As you know, we have already discussed while loop. So while loop, then we will change with the condition, then we will do the increment portion inside the loop and outside the loop, because for loop takes all the variables and all the initial, all the final, all the increment in the same line. But it is not the case of while loop. So we have to put, the things which we were initialization at the top, increment in the loop, and condition where we are declaring the while keyword. Isn't it? So we make the changes. Now we run this program again with making little changes here. We have to use what we have to use here. We have to use printf here again, /n, for what? For the new line. Every time after the first inner loop, every time printing the first time, then new line. Then the inner loop will reset again. Okay. So we will run this program and see whether this nesting of loop will work or not, because the first loop, what we do with the help of for loop. Now we will run after putting clear screen. So this is the same output. In the similar manner, you can use the same programming concept with printing the digits. If I use %d I or %d j in the program, then we can print the same output 1, 2, 3. Isn't it? Number pattern or number triangle, we can say. Right? So this is how nesting of loops work. Getting? So this is called nesting of loops. Means one is outer loop, one is inner loop. Okay. Let's do one more problem that is called as Floyd's Triangle. It's very popular question asked always in your exams. So let's start. We have to declare int variable, then I, then j, and for Floyd triangle we will declare a variable a is equals to 1, right? We will declare how many number of rows we want with the variable n. Okay, this program is very similar to which program we did earlier, but little different. So we require nesting of loops, we require two variables ij, right? So we will enter what? We will enter the message for number of rows we want. So we have entered the number of lines. Rows is called as lines. So we type, enter the number of lines which we want. Okay. Now we have to put /n for new line. That means the input should not be at the same line. So we type scanf for getting the input from keyboard for the number of lines. So we use what? Printf statement for what? Displaying the message for this is my output, that is output of Floyd triangle. For differentiating that this is my input and this is my output. Okay, so we are saying like this, and we make sure that every statement should terminate with what? Semicolon. So we close it with double quotes and then we will put a semicolon here, right? So we have to use one more thing here. What we require, we have to use the concept of nesting of loops. Without nesting, the Floyd triangle can't be possible. So we use for I is equals to 1, I less than equals to how many number of the rows or lines are n. So we have mentioned here n. So I is equals to 1, and then we increment it with the increment statement. In the similar manner, we have to go with the inner loop as well, because outer loop will be for number of rows and inner loop will be for number of columns, right? Rows and columns make the format, and column depends on, if we don't use here I condition, the j condition will not be depend on I. But in our question, if you want the concept, we will do the concept of matrix in future. We require the number of rows equal to number of columns. Then we need not to put here I. We have to use, for example, 3 rows, 3 columns. Like so. Now in this case, my output is depends on I variable, and that means what? J output is depends on I variable. That means that's the reason I have put condition here. So we are printing what? Now here what we have to print, whether we have to print I or J? No, we have to print A. So we will print it with semicolon, right? And now we put a space here. We close this inner for loop, then we will close outer for loop. We require a /n statement for the new line, otherwise it will print me on the same line, because whatever we give to the compiler, it will give the result as it is. So we have to put /n here, then we will close it. One more thing what we have to do here, we will do semicolon. If we do the same code, it will not print me the desired out. It will print what? It will print A is initialized at 1. So it will print as it is 1 1 1 1 series. That means 1 with a different format like we did earlier. But I required Floyd's triangle. So first of all, what we do here, we will save the program. First of all, we will save the program, and then we will check whether output is right or wrong. So first of all, we will save it, and we require little change here with incrementing a is equals to a plus 1. So we will increment it because we require a Floyd's triangle, not a normal, triangle pattern. So Floyd triangle has a pattern. So run it and we will see whether our desired output is there or not. We will put a clear screen before it because we want a fresh screen here, right? So see what is, enter the number of line which we want to print. We want 5 lines. So we will enter and we will see whether this is our Floyd triangle or not. Yes, it is a Floyd triangle. So Floyd triangle is what? We have to start with 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. In the similar manner, the triangle increases. The number of rows you will increase, the number of data will increase, isn't it? So this is all about Floyd triangle, and we learn the concept of nesting loops or nested loops. It's very important in future concepts when we do the concept of arrays. Okay, that's it for today's topic. Keep watching.